Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Lesleigh Jolin. She is a grief counselor. Is it that right word, Leslie?
I actually am a grief recovery advanced specialist.
Okay.
It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words. So I just kind of reduced it for you. I think it's really great what you're doing. And I'm so glad that we were connected by Larry. And we, a lot of times, just in every different phase of our life, we're dealing with grief in some shape or form. And I think we kind of have to like acknowledge it, right? That's kind of what you're doing.
Yes, so much so, Bridget. When we were talking before we began the recording, and we were saying that in these last 18 months of strife for all of us collectively, the underlying emotion of all of it has been sadness and grief in some way, because all of our people across the states, wherever they are, have been isolated. Sometimes parents have been at home with their children, needing to be parents and spouses and working people and teaching their children at home. And the isolation that has been paramount has been a large grieving issue. And so sadly, the CDC has statistics now that we unfortunately have witnessed 30% raise in suicides in this last year across our nation.
Oh, I didn't know that stat. And that's what it is. I think the change happens all the time, but it was like wham, bam. It was like a severe pivot for people. Yes. And change is hard in general.
When you say change, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
But that's okay. I think that was probably the cause of it. And people are just, we just need to support each other a little bit better, right? Yes. And I think we have stigmatized all this in the past, but it's you got to acknowledge it if you have grief issue. And I really appreciate again what you're doing. And you have this method. And can you share just real briefly what that method is?
Sure, absolutely. The beauty of the grief recovery method is it is a short-term one-to-one, which is what I offer in adults only exclusively across the nation. It's an 8-week experiential compassionate course, which teaches us how to process pain. And the beauty of the offer of it is it's the only evidence-based grief program in the nation or right now around the globe. And what I mean by that is in the last 5 years, the studies at Kent State University's College of Public Health, the adults who walked through our 8-week program had a significant change at the end of those 2 months in their knowledge of, their attitudes about, their beliefs, and ultimately their behaviors about dealing with loss. Because you and I both know that it's our belief system that governs our behavior. So to have that be an offer where someone can, this is not therapy, I'm trained as a psychotherapist, I offer my work as a specialist with this particular method. Because for me, having walked through such an inordinate amount of personal loss in my long life, this was the first opportunity that I had of recovering from grief that worked for me. Even though I've been in therapy in many different times in my life, this was the first method that really worked. And subsequently, when I'm offering it now the last 5 years, not surprisingly, my clients will say to me after 2 months, you know, Leslie, I had been in therapy and it was helpful, but this is the first unique process that helped me truly learn to process my pain.
And I kind of heard you mention that you had therapy before, so it's kind of like you took the pain that you had and helping others kind of purpose. Is that kind of what it is?
Yes. I don't want to take our precious time to.
No, that's okay.
My own losses,
right?
And some of the, some of them are really significant. I've lost my parents. I've lost some precious friends to a fatal auto crash, a fatal plane crash. Just some really heartbreaking losses. And what I only wish about this method, Bridget, when you and I first met, I think I was sharing this with you, is that I wish that someone, because this method is now 45 years old, and I wish someone had taught me this method 30 years ago, because it would have helped me so very much to process my loss in a different way back then.
Right. And I think what you're doing and people like you, it's going to help hopefully our culture a little bit, because it has been stigmatized to even talk about having people try to bury it, and then that makes them or make them sick or more stressed. And you had mentioned the suicides. The suicide data, is that a certain age group, or is it just all? It doesn't really. It's that specific.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's across the ages, and
right.
I so appreciate you bringing that up again, because when I speak with a group of therapists or colleagues, or a group of, at a study group for attorneys, wherever I speak, the first question I like to ask, because I love to have interactive groups so people can express their own sentiments about loss and what they've walked through. And I'm always so interested to hear that for anyone in their process. But I'll always ask, what do you think is the single most off limits topic of conversation in Western culture? And many times people will say politics, divorce, death, emotion. And I'll say, no, thank you for your thought. It's grief.
Yes.
Because we don't know in our Western culture how to speak openly about it. We sell Happy Meals at McDonald's. We don't know how to process our feelings of loss. So when someone asks us after a major loss, we're back at work after 3 days. Some corporations give their people only 3 days to be bereaved and come back to work. And someone says, how are you, Bridget? And you'll say, I'm fine. No, fine in my world means feelings inside never expressed, because we're not fine when we're grieving a major loss for just a few days. We need action and time, not just time. Sometimes people will say with the misinformation, oh, just give it time, Bridget, you'll get over it. No, it's not just time. If the time were just so, that would mean you and I are on a highway going to a concert together and have a blowout of our tire, and we're in the emergency lane and we're going to wait till the air blows back into the tire. No, we're going to be on AAA's call in 2 seconds going, get over here, we have an emergency.
Right.
But with our heart, we suffer for years. And the second question I'll ask a group of people is, how many of you have had a significant loss that when you think about this loved one still 5 years after the loss, your heart is still aching badly, and the hands will all go up. And I'll say, please keep them up if it still aches badly after 10 years, after 15 years, after 20 years. And if it were time, those hands would not rise. But it isn't time, it's action and time. That's the beauty of the difference of this method. It's an action-based program with significant steps that I teach each of my clients with compassion and assistance so they can walk through this process with me.
That is so important. And I believe you mentioned you do mostly one-on-one with people.
That's my passion.
Yeah, that's good, because then you can probably
not in a group, but I love one-on-one.
They're going to probably be more open with you rather than in a group, be more honest about it.
Sometimes. And you know,
sometimes, right.
Practitioners who lead groups with a special program. And that is just not my calling. My calling is to work with Bridget about Bridget's loss and delve deeply and have you have a significant transformation. And watching and witnessing that is my joy.
Well, you can also pick up more on their, if that person is trying to hide something, maybe, you know what I'm saying? Based on, because you're focused just one-on-one. And that will allow you to help dig deeper. And then do you have, I was just curious, I don't know why it popped into my head, but do you have like have them write in a journal or some kind of workbook? Or I was just curious.
Wonderful question. What I do at the beginning of our process, when I describe the method and the parameters of it, that we would choose a time each week to meet for 8 weeks that works for the client and me. And then I send a wonderful package of information to each client. I send our grief recovery handbook in hardbound that I sign. And with that handbook, there are, each week has a certain kind of homework and reading of the chapters and walking through that homework together. And I will send them some pages so they can download that or have it in hardbound copies and write their homework assignments each week that they read to me, and we walk through and discuss it.
Oh, wow.
So it's a commitment on the client's part to do the homework and to do the reading. And there are weeks when I know it's stressful. So what I do is I offer my program in what I call a concierge style. And what I mean by that is I know each week that emotions can rise during the week between our hour together. And so I welcome my clients to text me and say, Leslie, can we talk for 10 minutes today? I have some emotions I want to talk about. And we do that. And then we have our hour meeting or hour and a half meeting the next week at the same time. So it's structured and it's experiential for each of the clients. And it's compassionate from my heart to theirs throughout the few months. And sometimes, Bridget, because we each usually have more than a loss in our life, although my clients will come to me with a significant heartache of the moment, as many times what we'll find is grief is not just cumulative, it's cumulatively negative. And during the process of that few months, they'll realize they have another grief issue that they've never grieved that's in their history. And they might want to stay on after 8 weeks to work with me.
Oh, wow.
That issue.
I think what you're doing is just so good, because again, I'm from that generation. Like you said, I'm fine, right? That's what we were told to say. You wanted to show that you were perfect and tough, but being tough doesn't mean you got to hide those feelings. You don't have to tell everybody, but you have to get it out to somebody like you, or to help to heal. And I think as I've aged, things have come up in my mind, like things that I experienced when I was younger that I suppressed, and I didn't realize. You know what I'm saying? Experiences. I'm sure that's what's right. Just because you're talking to me, I'm like, whoa, some things have cropped up, but I'm not going to raise my hand because I've gotten over it, but I remembered some things. I have kept journals. I think that's one of the ways that I will get the information out of my brain. It's kind of cool to find that stuff that I wrote when I was younger. It's really funny. One of them, I have to throw in some humor too. That's kind of what I write in my journals. I throw in some humor because that's kind of helps me. Everybody's different. Humor just makes me look at the situation a little bit better. And I'm sure I'm not alone.
No, of course not. Humor can be very healing. So no, you're so right on. And keeping a journal is a beautiful way to process emotion. And yes, there's so many, adjunctive ways to heal. And the beauty of this process is this is not something that after 8 weeks is over. This is an emotional toolbox that once it's taught to any adult, they can take this with them through their lifetime. And John James, our beloved founder, our beloved late founder, oh my goodness, John passed about a month ago. I think I shared that with you. And so
right.
The beauty of this man was so visionary, and he wrote the book so that anyone who lives, say, in a rural area, because of course he began writing this book 45 years back before we were on the internet and could work online together. So he wrote it so that if someone was in a rural country area, they didn't have a specialist close by face to face with whom they could work, they could read the book and process their feelings on their own if they chose to do so. However, having a specialist expert who's trained and certified in this method, there's no comparison between trying to do that hard work on your own and having someone with compassion lead you through the process.
I like that aspect because we can't do it all alone. Right? And that's something I have learned, just to tough it out and try to do just in general work. You got to hire people to help you get something done. And if you've got serious grief, you need help. And I've noticed there's more and more people, younger people who are getting degrees or focusing on psychology. And I think that is good to help understand how our human emotions and minds work together, that the connection that they have. And so I think that's so important.
Bridget, I so love what you just said about grieving alone, because that is a significant myth in our culture, which sometimes as children were trained by parents who were never trained about grief, who do their best to be parents and loving most of the time, and might say, if you're going to cry, go to your room and cry and grieve alone. And the fact is that the antidote to grief is participation, not grieving alone. It's participation. It's having someone help you through that process. And yes, there are times when being on our own and being quiet is important. And yes, that's good. However, having someone with arms around you spiritually is a really productive process.
I had to write that down. The antidote to grief is participation. I've never heard that statement. I think I kind of instinctively know that, but I think it's really cool. What do you think about, I shouldn't say instincts. That's something that some people believe and some people don't. And I like to, in a situation, making a decision, sometimes you got to go with your gut or your instinct.
So tell me a little bit more about that. I would love to hear that.
I'm just like making a bad choice about grieving over something. I'm very, very, very lucky, to be honest with you, in a marriage, but I have some friends who weren't, right? And they stayed in a marriage that caused more grief. Does that make sense? And they didn't listen, their instincts told them to. That's a tough thing too. And it's a culture thing. And that's kind of what made me think of that. I am really lucky. I married somebody who wanted to protect was the wrong word. That makes sense. Now was I his wife, but he wanted to always protect me.
That makes perfect sense. And I think I feel so happy for you from what you shared with me in our introductory interview a week back about the fact that the both of you are committed to communication.
Yes.
Communication is the heart of recovery, because when we keep that pain and heartache and inside and never speak of it and try to sweep it under the rug and try to keep busy or keep focused on work or keep focused on something else other than the grief, or we have so many myths in our culture that are discussed in the beauty of this handwritten book by John. The myths about grief that we live through are so strong because our parents didn't know what to do about grief either. And so they would say, oh, just get another job, just keep busy. Oh, just you have a breakup with your loved one and you're 16, that's okay, there are plenty of fish in the sea. You're 16 and your heart's broken over the guy who rejected you, and your mom is saying, or your dad's saying, honey, there are plenty of fish in the sea, just replace the loss. No, we need to grieve what is lost, because in our culture, Western culture teaches us how to acquire things, not what to do when we lose them.
I like, again, how you said that, because my first book was called Real Things. And I mentioned how we focus so much on money and power and physical things. And we need to, and that's the lesson I got from after dealing with cancer and things like that. But I did, they had people, which I thought was really great, to help emotionally deal with that.
Yes.
Right. And that's kind of what I saw when I took a step back and listened to, talking to a counselor. I'm like, I'm still here. Right. And I don't give a crap what kind of car I drive. And you know what I'm saying? And that's kind of where it's important to you. And I can again, I mentioned I'm really, really lucky with my spouse. We communicate a lot. We're the opposite, but that's probably a good thing too.
Yes, it sounds like your communication is really excellent, and that's such
Right.
an
There's some days we probably want to kill each other, but I'm kidding. Okay. People, I'm very sarcastic sometimes. Sorry. But they're right. You have to be open and to listen. And I think I probably, just because of weird experiences and having good mentors, being around people help as well. And being open, you have to be open to getting help and to not be afraid to asking for help. And I admit, when I was younger, I would not ask for help because I wanted that. I go, Era, I was a tough girl, and you're probably from the same thing. You couldn't show your weakness,
yes,
and that's because of it's our culture. And
yes, yes. Don't cry. Go to your room if you're going to cry.
Right, I had that too.
It's crazy in our culture. Bridget, if I can for a moment, I would love to cite a couple of stories of past clients and their personal transformation with this method, because I think sometimes that telling a story about what happens for people, for your listeners, is so productive and helpful. I have a lovely past client who, from Illinois, was a wonderful therapist in her local area for many years. And then she had a tragedy with losing her 27-year-old son to illness. And her second son, who's alive and doing the best he can today, suffers with bipolar disease and disorder. And she had a loss of her late mother 20 years back in a home fire that she had never grieved. And so we worked together for actually several months over all of these losses. But after 5 weeks into the first introductory process of 8 weeks, I opened Zoom and she said, I'll call her Mary. She said, Lesleigh, my husband wants to give me a message for you. I said, sure, what is it? She said, he said to tell that lady, thank you, because I have my wife back for the first time in 5 years since our son died. And to hear that speaks to the beauty of what this kind of work can do for someone's heartbreak when this woman was so unable to function anymore as a therapist and hold space for her own clientele. And
that's beautiful.
It's just so fulfilling as a practitioner for me to witness that kind of transformation. Truly, truly beautiful.
That is a great story, right? The husband noticed. So you obviously made a big impact on this woman. You helped their marriage, not just her, I think.
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, yes. Their marriage was revived in a brand new way. And so that is really the extreme beauty of what this process is, because when we're sad and we're grieving and we're trying to be someone emotionally we're not, that expression of lack of authenticity affects everyone in our circle of people. And they might not say it, but they notice it. Our aliveness is deadened. We're not functioning at work to full capacity. We're not functioning in our friendships to full capacity because we're in heartache, understandably. And so talking about it, even when someone says to us after we've had a loss and we want to say, oh, I'm fine, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm having a hard day. And somebody might respond to that and say, oh, well, tell me more. And then we might say, you know what, I hope you're doing great today. I really don't want to talk about it, but thanks so much for asking. And I hope you have a great day. And just keep your boundaries. But in that way, just saying that is speaking our truth. Even though we might not want to talk all about it, we're still not lying about the moment of how we are. And that is a step forward in just having healthier boundaries.
That is really good. I like your perspective and your insight. Do you think, I was just curious with the this pandemic as well, people being isolated, do you think that's going to cause or is causing more grief in a way? Yeah.
Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. We are made to be social in our way of humanity. And this isolating time for all of us across our nation, we won't speak about the globe right now, but across our nation has been unspeakable. So much isolation, so much loss for senior people who are in apartments on their own without help. Oh my goodness, there are no words for families who are isolated from their usual social circles because of the pandemic and needing to stay at home. It's horrific. It's been a very, very tough year and a half for all of us. And so reaching out for help when we're losing someone to loss is so, so important. And speaking just of that, Bridget, we talked about this a week ago, and I want to just mention it. We sometimes think, because of our culture, once again, that loss is about death or divorce or estrangement from a friend. No, there are like 40 plus types of loss that we can endure in a lifetime that cause us grief, because some of the important definitions of grief are: grief is the conflicting mass of emotions that we feel when any familiar pattern changes. That means when we move from LA to New York for a better job and a better life, we are still grieving what we left behind. And our children are still grieving the house they left behind and the friends they left behind. Even though dad might say, oh, we're going to have a better house and a bigger house and more money and more whatever, we are still in grief, even though it might be a change for the better. I'll be personal. I'm married now later in life. The last 13 years I've been with my wonderful guy. And I was a feisty, independent, single woman for a decade plus. And even though I love my husband, there are times when I miss my tiny little condo on my own, where because I never cooked, I stored extra shoes in the oven and in the shelves in the kitchen, because that's the way it was on my own, okay? And so I laugh when I talk to groups and I cite this example, because I say, this is a happy issue. I have a wonderful mate and I love him and we're together. But there's the front of the hand and the back of the hand about everything that is in life that we experience. And there are so many different kinds of loss for women who are listening. Any woman who's listening who has had any life femme issues in her life, with a reproductive issue or an abortion issue or a miscarriage issue or a pregnancy that's had a birth of a beautiful child that's born by cesarean instead of vaginally, all these precious feminine issues. These are grieving issues when they occur that we press out of our mindset and think, oh, I can get over this. No, this is a grieving issue. Or a man, if there's an infertility issue or a man issue with sensuality in some way, these are all personal, important, grieving issues. And we don't think of them that way because we're tough, we can get over it and go on. No, we're not tough and we can get over it. We stuff it and then we act out in other ways.
I like those examples you gave, because the first thing that comes to when I think of the word grief, I think of death, right? I think of, like you said, marriage or going into a divorce, and that's, but that again, the way the words are used as well in our culture, maybe we need to talk about this more, what you're doing, and you're very calm, and I think that helps a lot too. And you found your purpose, and it's a beautiful aspect of what you're doing. So when you do these one-on-one, I'm just curious, how many clients how many clients can you handle at a time? Just curious.
Thank you so much for asking that. I usually don't have moderators ask me that wonderful question. That's great. So I want you to know, and every listener, I want you to know that I know I sound like a very youthful woman, and I am proud to be a youthful senior, and I am 75 years young. And I have begun this process with my business 5 years back. So I have opened my business in grief recovery specifically, although I've been employed in many other healing arts employment way before now. But in this business, I knew beginning it, Bridget, that I wanted to work part-time because I have a family, I have social circles, I have great commitment to self-care and yoga and meditation and acupuncture and things that keep Leslie healthy and well and able to hold the presence for grieving clients. So I work actually, I think I shared this with you. I work in a detox center once a week, and I lead a group on grief and loss for beautiful clients who are in the process of detoxing from any kind of whatever the issue might be, whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever it's been that they have self-medicated about, which is always an answer for the moment of grief, right? Underneath every addiction is grief.
Yes.
And so I will do that on Mondays, and we're opening a second facility in January. So that'll be my Monday. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I see clients. And at the most, I'll see 8 personal clients. And that is what I want to do to keep myself healthy and well, because holding space for people walking through such tender issues requires a great focus presence on my part.
Right. I like how you did that, because you have to take care of yourself to help others. And
Yes.
that's something that, right, I have written about that as well. And I just think it's so wonderful what you're doing. And can you let us know where we can learn more about you, the listeners?
Sure. About my background?
Well, I meant like your website, sorry, if they want to reach out to you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Was it specific? Where can they go?
Yes.
People that are listening, where can they reach out to you?
If anyone listening would like to reach out to me for a consultation or to hear more about what this method is, you can go to my website, which is, will this be in the program notes?
Yeah, I'll have it written as well for the listeners.
Okay, beautiful. My website is lesleighjtolin.com, and Lesleigh is Lesleigh. And on my website, listeners, under the tab resources are some beautiful downloadable articles, complimentary always, about grief and loss that might light your individual fires depending on the topic on many of them. And under speaking, if you scroll down to the bottom is another podcast interview if you'd like to hear more. And you can, on my website, there's many contact pages on each of the pages. Write me an email and tell me you'd like to talk for 20 minutes, and we'll have an individual conversation. It would be my honor to just hear your story and see if we are a good fit. And my phone number, if you want to text me, is 310-570-1337.
That's really great that you shared your number publicly. I just think you are just very helpful and generous yourself, because you've dealt with grief, obviously multiple ways, and you know how this process works. If people do need it, and you probably have a lot of good endorsements as well. Is that the right word, or testimonials? I'm not sure what. Right,
yeah, thank you for saying that. There are many testimonials on the site. When I was 20 years younger, Bridget, and my mama and dad were on the planet, about 5 years, so about 25 years back, I was working in hospice services for a decade. And in that period, I learned about end-of-life issues so closely. And I came to my late parents now, but healthy at that time, sat them down and said, let's talk about end-of-life issues. And they said, because I'm the youngest of 3, they said, your eldest brother can't talk about this. How can you talk about it? I said, Mom, Dad, this is what I do every day with my clients. Let's talk about how at the end of life, you want to be honored. Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? What do you want on your stones if you want to be buried? what. And all of that detail was discussed in advance of their eventual passing. And so at the time when my mama passed first, my father in his grief did not have to deal with any of that. That is something that on these end of life issues or grieving issues is so invaluable for adult children to discuss with their parents ahead of time if the parents aren't savvy to do that on their own. And having the support of their adult children is so invaluable. And I feel so glad looking back that I was able to give that gift to my parents so that when mama passed, my father had nothing to do except make a phone call and everything was taken care of already.
That's good.
Issues are so precious to take care of in advance. And so the grieving issues which come post-death are so important to openly discuss. So once again, if I can be of support, please call me or connect with me to any listener, and just Godspeed on your personal paths for health and well-being during such still a challenging time in our nation. And I hope everyone stays healthy and well.
I thank you again for your time, Leslie. It's really helpful, and it just puts some great ideas in my head and just great reminders. And for those listening, in the summary of this episode, I'll have the how you can contact her as well in the summary. And so again,
you're a miracle.
Yeah, I know I'm a miracle. People don't realize my background. I'm a miracle. I'm still here.
You're a living miracle, and it's such a joy to have met you and heard your story. And I just so support and send you the most healing vibes to stay healthy and well going forward.
Thank you. I need those vibes every day.